All right, good afternoon, everyone. Today is Wednesday, February 4th. We will be starting our 1 p.m. hearings. I appreciate your indulgence. We're just running a few minutes behind. With that said, welcome to Economic Matters Committee. I would just remind everyone that are not legislators presenting before us that you will be timed. You have a 2-minute time frame to present your testimony. If for whatever reason your testimony is caught by the bell, please wrap your summation. We're not in court, but your testimony, we'd appreciate that. We are here to hear you and listen to you. If you have written testimony, they will be read. We all have your testimony on our laptops as well. With that, we have 5 bills on our agenda, and we'll begin with House Bill 314. Is Delegate Stewart here? Good afternoon. Do you have a panel with you? Okay. Gotcha.
Whirl of a hydraulic arm. The future of work, this AI transformation, this automation revolution that we're in the midst of, it didn't arrive with a bang. It's arriving with a quiet, steady replacement of Marylanders by stuff like algorithms and sensors. And so with House Bill 314, we aren't here today to break the machines, but we are here to make sure that the people they replace aren't broken by the transition. And so this bill is a modernization plan for the Maryland workforce, and it rests on 3 pillars. First, transparency. This bill asks large employers, 100 or more employees, to notify the state when they automate at scale. Right now, we're basically flying blind. We can't solve a problem because we don't have the data to see what's exactly occurring. Number 3, the bill has what's called a transition assessment. This is the most controversial part of the bill. We create what I think is a modest fee of $900 that the company will pay for each displaced worker. Think of this as, for pardon kind of the ENT in me, but a recycling fee for the labor market. If a company saves millions in long-term payroll by automating, this bill asks them to contribute a tiny fraction of those savings back into the state's human infrastructure. And third, this bill has a retraining fund. So every cent of that money that we collect goes into a dedicated fund to get that specific worker back in the game, learning to code, learning to become a technician, transitioning to a high-demand trade. Now, you will hear a few different arguments from the opponents. The first thing they'll say is that we already have this thing called the WARN Act that handles layoffs. But calling this bill duplicative of the WARN is kind of like saying that a fire alarm is the same thing as a fire truck. The WARN Act is basically a 20th century smoke detector. It gives 60 days notice that your job is gone, and that's it. It doesn't give a worker a dime in retraining, and it doesn't help the state rebuild its talent pool. And more importantly, WARN is blind as to how AI is actually working in our communities, because automation doesn't generally come in one massive layoff. It happens through a death by 1,000 cuts. And so under WARN, a company can actually lay off 40 workers in one fell swoop and still not even have to give notice, or none of the provisions in the program apply. This bill, HB 314, lowers that threshold to 10 employees, which captures the reality of the incremental replacement that we're seeing. This bill, in other words, is kind of the fire truck to put out the fire of unemployment. Now, you will also hear from groups like the Chamber and the Tech Council that this bill is a tax on innovation. I would instead call it an insurance policy for the Maryland worker. Because first, on innovation, if a $900 assessment for a company saving millions in annual payroll, that's not a tax, that's a rounding error. if a business model is so fragile that that tiny one-time fee to help a human being find a new career breaks their so-called innovation, then their innovation was not very robust to begin with. And on competitiveness, they of course make the familiar argument that this kind of bill would drive companies away, but I would argue the opposite. Companies go where the talent is. And so by building this fund, we are telling the world and telling the country that in Maryland, our workforce is evergreen. We don't let the talent pool stagnate. We reinvest. And so at the end of the day, colleagues, I think we have a choice. We can wait for a mass unemployment crisis to hit the state budget, where the taxpayers are forced to scramble and pick up the tab for emergency assistance, or we can build a system now, ahead of time, where the process of automation itself funds the solution. And so this bill, I think, ultimately is about fiscal responsibility. It's about shifting the cost of this economic transition on the way away from being on the public, on taxpayers, and onto the very technology that's driving the change. And so we can lead on this issue by being proactive with ideas like this, or we can spend the next decade or two being reactive. I would prefer that we lead. So I respectfully urge a favorable report on House Bill 314.
Thank you, Delegate Stewart. Delegate Chi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's good to see you, my Montgomery County
Likewise.
colleague, who always has innovative ideas. So I'm intrigued by your idea, and I certainly understand the intent, and I appreciate you thinking ahead of time to create a human-centric community and society. I am interested in where that idea has been tried elsewhere, where the idea came from other countries or other states or industry input, whatever. So if you could speak to that, and then I have a follow-on question.
Sure. So the fund side of this is not novel or unique at all. A bunch of states and a bunch of other countries are now grappling with how they can create funds to try to retrain workers in the face of what every expert in this area is predicting could be a massive, widespread bout of unemployment. And you know, the opponents will say, and I don't necessarily disagree, it's not all a bad thing. Technology is good. I'm not here to try to be like a Luddite and try to block the path to progress. But I think that we have had throughout American history times of rapid innovation that has led to winners and losers. And I think we have not always been thoughtful as a state, but also more importantly as a country, in trying to spread out the losses so it's not just a few people who have to bear the cost of that technological progress and bear the cost of that economic growth. So to answer your question, a bunch of states are trying to figure out how they can get funds in place and programs in place to retrain people who are absolutely going to be losing their jobs to AI. Now, the specific mechanism here of trying to tax it and then, or assess it, and then adding that to the fund is an idea that's been percolating mostly in Europe at this point, and that some other states have kicked around. But this exact formula of an assessment attached to a fund we would be the first state to actually pass it if we did.
Okay. So the follow-on question I have is, you know, I care deeply about Maryland's economic competitiveness.
I know. You do a great job voicing that.
Business climate overall. I don't want us to inadvertently make ourselves less competitive, because a lot of businesses here, because they love the community, this is where they live, work, and raise families, this is where the churches are, what have you. In the process of that, they also are price sensitive in terms of how much tax they pay, how much regulation they have to deal with, and we're not doing a great job on that front, right? We all know that, because you can't argue with the results. So my concern is whether or not businesses will add that into their calculation of desirability in locating here and expanding their workforce here on the front end, knowing on the back end, if they have to make that decision, they have to pay a price, right? So I just wonder if you thought about that or consulted with the
I thought deeply about this, and I'm serious that you deserve, I think, a lot of commendation for being a Democrat who is laser focused on economic growth and business and competitiveness, and we need more of that. I mean, we're absolutely lagging behind states like Virginia and other states on all these metrics that we care about, including economic growth. And I thought deeply about that issue as I put this bill in, because I don't want this to be more of the same and more part of the problem. And that's why we tried to tailor it, I think, in a very responsible way that really makes this fee the issue of last resort. And so if a company, for example, you'll see in the provisions of the bill, if they provide a severance if they provide retraining themselves or a number of other things, they're not assessed the fee, or they at least get a greatly reduced fee. So we want companies to do the right thing, and in many cases what they're already doing, which is to either provide some sort of severance package or retraining themselves. But if they don't, if they just really do kick someone on the curb because they're saving millions of dollars by going with automation, I think it's reasonable to ask them to just pay a one-time $900 fee, which is a fraction of the cost. And if that number needs to be lower, if the folks that are going to come out back with me or want to work with us on coming up with a number that makes sense. The reason I came up with $900 is because I was trying to do some back of the envelope math of how much these retraining programs cost. And I wanted to make sure the retraining program would be real and robust and not just kind of a paper certificate that doesn't actually teach someone a trade or something they need, the type of retraining they actually need. And I know, obviously, given the budget crisis and crunch that we're in, I didn't want to have to dip into general funds to do that. So this is not meant to be punitive. It is not meant to hold our economy back. It's not to punish job creators. It's just an insurance program. AI is coming for a lot of us. We don't know who it's going to come from. It could be coming for me. I don't know. But I think we need to look ahead into what's coming, and we need to prepare for it in some way. And maybe the exact text of the bill right now is not the answer, but I'd love to work with you and members of this committee to figure out how we plan for this future.
Delegate Adams, you don't have a question anymore? Okay, Delegate Amber, you had, okay, you don't either. Delegate you canceled yours also? Okay, so, Delegate Rogers.
Yeah, so, thank you, Madam Chair. I just noticed that there's a lot of unfavorable testimony. Have you tried to work with any of the stakeholders to get those unfavorables to favorables?
We have not. We have not had them reach out to us other than them putting the bill in. So answer is no. I think there are at least like 3 or 4 people that are going to testify unfavorably. I mean, they're all sort of related groups. I mean, it's essentially the business community. And I get it. I get their concerns, right? I mean, again, as I addressed to your colleague, Subcommittee Chair Chi, we don't want to add more costs on businesses. We want Maryland businesses to come here and innovate and create jobs. At the same time, we want to make sure that we have a talent pool in Maryland where people have training and have skills in the 21st century. And so what I'm attempting to do with this bill is to create a balance where we don't drive out companies, but we also make sure that people get the training they need. I'm always more than happy, Delegate Rogers. I am like back in my old days with ENT, and I'm sure on my new committee, I am a wheeler dealer extraordinaire. I'm always looking to meet in the middle. And so, of course, I hope that these folks will reiterate that same premise. I would love to sit down with any of them other than Mr. Wiggins, because I just personally have a distaste for him. But other than him, I'm happy to sit down with any of them and try to work out a solution.
So thank you for that, and I suspect that they'll probably be willing to sit down and work with you, and understanding that you're the wheeler dealer extraordinaire.
That's right.
And
self-identified, at least.
As a small business owner
Yeah.
myself, I'm hoping that we can get to what right looks like.
Yeah, and to be clear, this is just big businesses. So this is just 100 employees or more, and maybe that number needs to be increased. Maybe that's one of the deals that we wheel, right? But I appreciate the sentiment very much.
Delegate Ahrens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question would be, you do know where Maryland's ranked in getting business, drawing business right now.
We're 49th right now in starting a new
I
business.
think they're tied now at 50. But
okay, we already dropped it the last few days again. Okay.
well, I guess my big question would be is, people don't want to be here now. Our regulations, taxes, everything is telling people to get out of here. We're losing population every day. What would benefit, how would I, as a business, want to come here? Why would this is not going to attract business, I can assure you that. And I think some of the people that are going to be displaced by AI, I don't know if your target's where it needs to be, because you see companies that are local, I mean, supermarkets and stuff, those are the people that may get replaced. I just don't understand how this would work out. And already we pay unemployment insurance. That's what our fix was for these types of things. And I just don't understand, I just really don't understand where it would work, Delegate.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that very much, and I'm with you. I agree. I'm not blind to these statistics either. We got to do a much, much better job. I'm being earnest. We have to do a much better job of growing the economy, or we're going to continue facing these budgetary crises, because we're going to have to continue fighting cuts, continue finding new revenue if we don't have the #1 tool at our disposal to have a balanced budget, which is just economic growth. I don't view this as an anti-growth proposal. And you're right, we have a lot of different taxes and regulations, and you're right that a lot of other states have a more competitive business climate. I'm with you. To me, this is about a skilled workforce. To me, one thing that we do have in our favor, and if you look at some of the rankings on this, we have an extremely bright, educated, and skilled labor force. And I think one of the things that makes Maryland attractive to businesses, and we have to do much more than just this, of course, is that we have a really talented labor pool. And I don't want to see us fall behind in the industries of the future because, for example, a grocery store worker is underskilled in other ways and their unemployment insurance dries up, and now they're left holding the bag because they do not have the skills necessary to be in a 21st century economy, and other states are providing better training programs than us, and so businesses decide to go to other states, not just because of the tax environment now, but also because we're falling behind when it comes to the skills that workers are gonna need in the AI future. That's where I'm coming with this, but where you're coming from and where I'm coming from, I don't think are that far apart.
My other comment would be is, and I mean, AI is huge. I understand that, it's big. I lived through the PC phase in this country where I remember when the first PC came out where everybody was going to be unemployed, we're never going to work again, everything happened. And sometimes the market takes care of itself in the sense that with AI, it's going to create jobs. And I think that's the hope I have. I don't know how it's going to create them because if I did, I'd be wealthy and whatever. But I appreciate your thoughts. I appreciate you coming in here with it. I just don't know where it fits in Maryland's world at this point. But thank you for coming.
And I appreciate you, and I'll just briefly say, I hope that we're all wrong and that all the experts are wrong, that this is going to be this massive harm on the economy and it's going to mean massive unemployment. I hope that's wrong, and you're right. People have said the sky is going to fall before with new technology, and it hasn't really panned out that way, and maybe that's how things will result. I just view this as an insurance program just in case the experts are right. Sure.
Delegate Queen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you for bringing this to our attention. I do think it's something we need to talk about. One of the things I kind of look at when I'm looking at research, and one of the places I go to is Brookings Institute. They're very progressive and will have great ideas. From their July 2025 top paper, they talked about this issue. They talk about other issues in addition to it, but specifically to use better use of colleges and community colleges to help retrain folks. So I guess I want to know more about, and you can tell me later, when you said other states are looking at the funding aspect, how are they doing that? Are they funding it from, as you're suggesting, some sort of new fund, or are they doing something else? If you don't have that, or if you want to send that to me later,
and I've seen that Brookings, and I see that Brookings report, and I also appreciate their work on this. And you'll see if you Google around on the idea of, sometimes this is called a robot tax. I don't necessarily like that term, but if you Google around on this, you'll see that this whole idea of trying to basically make it so that these big tech companies can't socialize the losses on the taxpayer, and they have to at least fork out something for retraining, is an idea that's getting a lot of traction with all the people that are way smarter than me that write these kinds of white papers, right? To answer your question, I think states are looking at a number of different things. I think it is really smart to use our existing resources, which is our community colleges, our existing training programs, our existing apprenticeship programs, rather than trying to recreate the wheel. And the way it's structured now is that the fund could be used for those types of programs. It doesn't have to be like a new state agency or something like that, but we could use the millions of dollars, or hopefully not millions, hopefully just thousands, because not very many people are going to lose their jobs, right? But like, we could use the millions in the fund to redirect to some of our existing anchor institutions so that they can be part of the solution as well.
Yes, I just want to make sure we're clear that the AI change and whatever, it's not just a Maryland problem. This is global.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So solutions should be more broader, and looking to see what other folks are doing would be a good practice.
That's what I'm trying to do. I appreciate it.
Delegate Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And hello, Mr. Chief Deputy.
Yeah, and welcome to the committee.
Thank you, thank you. I was just curious, you mentioned that there are other states. How many other, do you know how many, and could you just name a few?
I think that there are at least, I've seen at least like 8 or 9 states in my research that are basically trying to figure out how to get a fund going.
Okay.
if you guys are more interested or really interested in the topic of like which bills have been introduced with the tax component, which bills have been introduced with the fund component, I'm happy to send an email out this afternoon to the committee so that you guys can read up about this. It is absolutely, as Delegate Queen said, a national and a global problem that everyone's trying to figure out at the same time. And this is not, in that way, I mean, I've basically stolen this idea. Like, this is not like as novel as it may seem.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Adams.
Thank you, Chair. So we just had Department of Labor and Secretary here for a briefing on unemployment insurance. And one of the subjects we talked about was the future of the UI Trust Fund and modeling that they're using to predict out, well, I don't have the report in front of me, but I think they have this turn out to like 2036 for the next 10 years. And the reason why I'm bringing that up and my question to you is, isn't unemployment insurance the right mechanism to help with these sort of things? And I mean it in the following way. There are opportunities for different schedules that businesses have to pay based on their usage of, layoff protections for workers. So you have different schedules that relate to what industries and or what businesses pay as a cost for these sort of decisions they end up having to make. But the state of Maryland can also, and I'm not sure I agree with the policy proposals I'm getting ready to suggest to you, but I mean, you can change the, the caps on at what point do you stop collecting unemployment insurance. In other words, there are ways to use insurance that's actuarially sound, if I understand unemployment insurance correctly, that not only looks at today but can predict somewhere into the future, and that the right way to go about this is to not create a one-off fund, but rather allow the Department of Labor through the science of economy and market to predict out what actually is going to happen, as opposed to creating a fee and a expense to businesses for something we really don't even know whether we need this or not.
Right. So first of all, I have advocated in the past for shifting our unemployment structure around so that we can pay out more to people and raising some of the caps that we've had. So I certainly don't want to suggest that that can't be part of the solution. I think that that's a little bit of a blunt instrument when I think we could really use a scalpel, because people lose their jobs for all sorts of reasons. They lose their jobs sometimes because they're not very good at it. They lose their jobs because a business unfortunately had to go under. We're targeting a very, very specific sliver, which hopefully will not be, to your point, a massive share of the reasons people are unemployed in any given year. But it's specifically layoffs that are large in scale, and it's after a large company has adopted some kind of automation that is the contributing factor towards at least 10 people being fired at the same time. So we're trying to be really narrow and targeted here, not towards every single person who loses their job like unemployment insurance, not even just one person who may or may not have been replaced by a robot, who knows. We're trying to target the biggest companies in particular, and only these mass events where they have been replaced by some kind of new technology. It's a situation where the company is undoubtedly going to be saving millions of dollars, and rather than the taxpayer fitting the bill, or people in their, in terms of like their payroll taxes, having to foot the bill, I think it makes sense for the companies, the ones who are generating the profits from this, to pay a little tiny fraction of those profits.
I'm sorry, I understand your testimony. That's a testimony in your bill. What I'm saying is that there is a mechanism in place that can scale costs and expenses to the businesses that pay for use as it's needed, not necessarily through the lens of anticipation. So you don't, in this bill, you don't believe that unemployment insurance is the proper path for dealing with?
I think it can be part. I think it can be part of the solution. No, okay. I wouldn't go there. I think it absolutely, and I think you raise a really good point, and I think that that's something I'm sure the committee will continue looking at. I think that can absolutely be part of the solution, but I think if the scale of this problem is as large as some people are predicting, we're probably going to need multiple policy levers to pull at the same time.
So my other observation, thank you, Chair, I'll be done after this. You fear AI. And I don't know that everybody fears AI. I think it has the potential to change things. But I don't know that it's going to be this thing that all of a sudden in 5 years nobody has work to do. What I do think is going to happen is it's going to make work more efficient. I think it's going to help people do better, more valuable work in the sense that you're using automation to elevate the quality of time that you're spending in a business, and that you're worried about just straight up AI is going to replace workers. No, what it's going to do, and this is my counterpoint, and I'll ask if you think it's even possible what I'm saying is going to end up happening in 10 years, is that it's going to help people do better work with automation, and at worst, okay, at worst, it just means they're going to have to find other lines of work. But I don't even think that's going to be, the case. You might be talking about manufacturing that becomes automated. Well, okay, that's if you're taking away hands that people have to do work and replacing it with a robot. I mean, I suspect that I understand your concern, but the vast majority of the economy is retail, service, government. So the point is that there are many different industries that relate to this, and which goes back to my original point, which is this seems to be a manufacturing concern where you can see a person being removed and a computer or a robot being put in its place, and unemployment insurance in essence would be the right place to say to that industry participant or the industry in general, hey, we see a lot of your usage, ergo your schedule or your reimbursements to the UI trust fund are going to be higher than, say, a retailer. That's my point.
So what I would say to very cogent remarks as always, and I would say, as we sometimes do, actually, Delegate Adams, you and I agree. I don't fear AI. I think you're actually exactly right, that I think that AI will make jobs easier for a lot of people. It will not displace them, that it will make them more efficient. I actually think that AI is very likely to have a net positive impact on the economy and society as a whole, including the workforce. We fully agree. I would analogize it a bit to the globalization revolution that happened a couple of decades ago, where a lot of jobs, for better or for worse, were either shipped overseas or shipped to where I'm from in Alabama when it comes to some of these auto manufacturers. Right. And I think overall, there was economic growth, and I think overall people's style of living and improved. I think overall, I'm not someone that thinks that we should put the genie back in the bottle with globalization, but yet there were losers, and we did not do a good enough job of anticipating where the losers would be and trying to soften the blow to them. And as a result, like in places like Flint, Michigan, you had mass suicides. You had men who had good paying jobs that could provide for their families for years, and their entire identity was built around that job and providing for their family. And it was ripped for them because we didn't anticipate the scale of the impact it would have on regular humans. We didn't pass bills like this on the federal level to help people like that. And I don't want a very small minority of people to be holding the bag again with mass scale unemployment, and they can't provide for their family, and they seek refuge in the bottle and in depression and drug use and in opioids and all this kind of stuff like we've seen before. I don't want to see that again. That doesn't mean that I fear AI. That doesn't mean that I don't, not rolling out the red carpet for it. I like to use ChatGPT like a lot of people probably do. I don't fear it at all. I think it's going to be good for society, but that doesn't mean we can forget about the people who it's not going to be so good for.
Okay, that was cogent.
Okay.
The only thing I'll say is, the business groups certainly are aware of this. I'm a business owner and I'm aware of it. I know that we've got industry participants like Grayson and, the Chamber of Commerce, and we look forward to working with that group.
See back there? Don't even tell me.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
I know the business community is aware of AI, and
yeah,
and it's front page news for us as well.
Yeah.
So while we might disagree on your policy conversation, I think that generally speaking, AI presents an exciting opportunity to do a thing that we haven't seen in a long time. Yeah.
I'm with you. Appreciate it.
Delegate Amprey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you.
As always.
Delegate Stewart. I guess first, I'm still trying to understand. I'm in alignment with Delegate Chi's comments. I'm a big believer in we have to be really, really thoughtful here in Maryland about how we're putting laws together that make us competitive in the region. And I always believe that, we're in a unique spot, like unlike other states that we like to compare ourselves to, whether it's California, whether it's Washington, whether it's New York. We're in a really unique position where it's really easy to move a business when you're in Maryland. It's really easy to go to Virginia, Delaware, Pennsylvania. So we have to be really careful, even more careful, in my opinion, around those laws. So I want to understand more so, how did you arrive at why this wouldn't make us a disadvantage? And then number two, like the $900, you kind of alluded to it earlier. Mm-hmm. What's the $900? Like, where does that number come from? Is it really going to do anything?
Yeah, both are good questions, and I appreciate your remarks. And like I said to Delegate Chi, I appreciate your leadership on these issues too, to try to make sure that we as Democrats keep competitiveness at the forefront. First of all, just to answer the low-hanging fruit question, the $900, obviously any number is going to be pretty arbitrary, right? But essentially I looked at what is the average cost of these retraining programs. Like if you've got one person and you need to teach them a skill, what's the average cost? And it's, probably depending on which skill you're trying to learn can be obviously a lot more than $900. For example, if you wanted to go learn a high-paying trade, but looking at sort of what other states put together and what some countries are kind of budgeting towards this, generally the range that I saw per employee of what made sense was something like $750 to $2,000, because not every employee that gets laid off is actually going to utilize the fund. Right? So you have to remember that for every 10 people that are laid off, that's a mass event that triggers the fee under the bill. If severance is not paid, which it often is, and if no retraining is done by the company, which it often is. But in those situations where you've got 10 or more people in a massive company and they're not offering retraining or severance, then for those 10 employees, they'd pay $9,000, $900 per person. Now, $9,000 out of the millions that they would save from just 1 year of payroll is a tiny, tiny fraction. But the uptake percentage on these funds in the research that I've seen is usually around 17%. So essentially the math I did is if 17% of the workers of the people that get fired actually draw from the funds, then $900 is enough to cover the cost of a robust training program. So that's how I did the math. It's a little bit back of the envelope, I'll admit, but I did try to put a little bit of thought into it. Now, your point about how this is going to drive business, how is it going to drive businesses away? We need to be more competitive is, of course, a really good one. And the folks that are going to come up here after me are going to say that maybe this is a relatively small price in the grand scheme of things, but everything counts. To Delegate Aarons's point, right? Every year the General Assembly comes down here and adds new regulations and new fees, and it's death by 1,000 cuts. And I'm sensitive to those arguments. But I think what I would say is I would ask them when they come up, for an average mass layoff event where 10, 20, 30, 40 people are laid off by a new technology that they've invested in, how much money are they saving? You guys should ask them, because I think the number is going to be in the 7, 8 figures. I don't think it's going to be in the 3 figures like the assessment is going to do. I think that this is going to be a rounding error for these companies. I think they're going to forget about the impact on their bottom line. But what companies won't forget about, at least the purpose and the intent of the bill, is that Maryland has the best trained workforce in America, because every single person that gets laid off from robots will have an opportunity to receive a world-class education to get right back on their feet.
Got it. Well, I appreciate, I think the spirit of the bill, I agree we have to find a solution for the growth of AI, and I hope that you and the industry can work together, especially folks like Mr. Wiggins. I know you were joking earlier, but
Grayson knows I love him, yeah.
But no, I think ultimately, I think it's one of those solutions where I don't think we can do it alone as a legislature. We really have to get business on the side of how we move forward. I think they have more of the answers, and probably even have better metrics to understand what's going to look like 3, 4, 5 years out. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm with you. And to Delegate Rogers' point too, like I'm happy to sit down with industry folks and anyone else who's interested in having that conversation. Whether this bill is the vehicle and this session is the year, I'm not sure, but I think we've got some work to do, because this future is barreling down at us at a pace that I think not everyone expected.
Thank you, Delegate Stewart. I see no further questions.
Thank you for being patient with me, Madam Chair.
Oh,
Great to see you.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Members, we're now going to move on to the opposition, to the unfavorable. We have 3 in-person and 1 virtual. Grayson Wiggins, Evan Richards, Megan Stokes, and our virtual is Margaret Durkin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Grayson Wiggins here on behalf of the Maryland Chamber of Commerce. Always enjoy a good debate with my good friend, Delegate Stewart. I think I do have to address something that he said. One of the things I think he may be forgetting about, because he called the WARN program this archaic 20th century vehicle or policy. Maryland passed what's commonly referred to as the Mini-WARN Act 4 or 5 years ago. The former chair of this committee was actually the co-sponsor of that bill, and it applies when 15 employees are laid off. So this, the theoretical situation he gave you where a company would lay off 50 people and nothing would happen is inaccurate because we do have that policy on the books. The Maryland Chamber of Commerce, we support workforce development, retraining. We conduct job fairs across the state. And we also, I think this point was made previously, we understand that there is the UI fund that can help contribute to that. DWDAL at the Maryland Department of Labor provides a lot of good services and programs. The counties also provide a number of good services. WorkSource Montgomery, Employee Prince George's, every county in the state offers these types of services. And additionally, we had the tech tax that was enacted last year with $480 million expected. And so we would, I would suspect that the chamber would support allocating some of that funding to retraining efforts. I would just point out in the bill as well, this is on page 2, line 12. This threshold that the bill enacts applies when 10 employees while deploying or using automated technology are laid off, when that automated technology contributed to the reduction. So there's no safe harbor in the bill. As I read it, if an employer has an automated system of any sort and they lay off, let's say the 10 employees weren't able to use that automated system, or they were let go for other reasons, this contributed language is very broad and vague. And so you're going to have a situation where a lot of businesses are going to be forced to pay this when AI replacement, or to Delegate Stewart's point, may not even be the cause of this, just because the language in the bill is so vague. And so for those reasons, Madam Chair, we are opposed to the bill. Thank you.
Restarting? Okay. Chair Valderrama and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Megan Stokes. I'm the State Policy Director for the Computer and Communications Industry Association, also known as CCIA, and we respectfully oppose House Bill 314. CCIA represents leading technology and communication companies that invest heavily in innovation and workforce development, including here in Maryland. We share the committee's goal of supporting workers through economic transitions. However, 314 takes a fundamentally flawed approach that would harm Maryland's economy without meaningfully helping displaced workers. First, the bill unjustifiably vilifies technology adoption. It treats workforce reductions allegedly linked to automation as uniquely suspect, as though they are categorically worse than reductions driven by market conditions, restructuring, or economic downturns. In reality, workforce decisions are almost always multi-factor. Attempting to determine whether a reduction in force was caused by automation is inherently subjective, unworkable, and likely to invite confusion and litigation. Second, House Bill 314 would disincentivize innovation and investment. The enormous increases in productivity, real wages, and GDP per capita from the pre-industrial era to today are primarily attributable to the development of new automation-enhancing technologies and their deployment across the economy. Singling out automation-enhancing technologies risks treating innovation as something to be punished rather than encouraged. Technological change resulting in increased automation has reshaped society through the creation of new roles, higher productivity gains, and raising living standards across the economy. The precedent of more bank tellers being hired decades after ATMs were introduced and more radiologists getting hired after AI tools became widespread in radiology practices shows that automation is often a driver of productivity, enhancing transformation, and task switching rather than worker replacement. My colleague already mentioned the Minnie-Warren Act, the Maryland Economic Stabilization Act. Those rules were finalized in October. They would definitely be very helpful for our members. So thank you very much. Respectfully oppose.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Evan Richards. I'm head of Government Community Relations for the Maryland Bankers Association. We're here respectfully in opposition to House Bill 314. Maryland Bankers Association believes that this will inadvertently create a disincentive to modernize systems, ultimately harming Marylanders more than it would protect them. But I'll start by saying, banking is and always will be a relationship-centered business where technology enhances rather than replaces the products and services they offer. Customers rely on personal guidance for mortgages, small business lending, financial planning, and problem resolution. Maryland banks succeed because of trusted long-term relationships with customers and communities, not because of automation. But this automation is a tool that banks use. The definition of automation technology in the bill is very broad. And so why we talked a lot about artificial intelligence earlier, chatbots, virtual assistants, automated underwriting tools, fraud detection systems, things like ATMs could be captured on this as well. And these tools are all used to provide a safer and faster and more accessible services to customers. These tools handle routine tasks so that employees can focus on more complex, relationship-based interactions that customers value. Automation supports faster loan decisions, improved fraud prevention, 24/7 access to banking services, and enhanced customer convenience and accessibility. In a highly unregulated industry with narrow margins, these added costs often may be borne by consumers through higher banking fees, reduced investment in service improvement, and fewer low-cost or innovative financial products. For all those reasons, we urge the committee to give House Bill 314 an unfavorable report. Thank you.
We have the one virtual.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Margaret Durkin, and I'm the Mid-Atlantic Executive Director for TechNet, a tech trade association. Thank you for allowing me to share our concerns on House Bill 314. We recognize and value the importance of accountability with continued innovation. However, we believe that several parts of this bill will be problematic to our member companies. The description of automation technology used by a covered entity and the requirement to disclose that, we believe, could expose businesses' trade secrets and is inherently anti-competitive. Also, the requirements surrounding the Secretary of Labor adopting regulations, we believe that that's unclear and will lead to uncertainty. And we believe that this bill raises more questions than answers, such as how would a covered entity determine what caused that reduction and what metrics were used to prove or not prove that a reduction was caused by automation. We're also concerned about the affidavit requirement for employment changes under penalty of perjury. That, coupled with the uncertainty of the bill, again, concerned about how that might affect an officer of the company. And overall, we believe that the uncertainty of this bill, along with the proposed requirements, will disincentivize business investment in the state of Maryland. And I will note that many of our member companies already have upskilling and job opportunities for their current employees. Many times they are free. And so we would encourage the sponsor and the committee to let the free market do its work in this case, as opposed to government regulation. For the above stated reasons, TechNet is opposed to House Bill 314. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Durkin, and thank you to all of you. I don't see any questions from the members. So with that said, thank you very much. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 314. We'll now move on to House Bill 241, Business Occupations and Professions, State Boards and Commissions, sunset.
Madam Chair, there should be 4 executive directors on virtually just to answer questions. Good afternoon, Chair Valderrama, Vice Chair Charcuti, and members of the Economic Matters Committee. For the record, my name is John Dove, and I serve as the Commissioner for the Division of Occupational and Professional Licensing within the Maryland Department of Labor. Today, I am testifying in support of HB 241. This legislation is vital to maintaining the accountability, efficiency, and relevance of several key regulatory boards and commissions. As you know, the Maryland's Program Evaluation Act establishes Maryland's sunset review process, which mandates periodic legislative evaluation of certain boards and commissions to assess their performance, necessity, and responsiveness to the public interest. Under the current schedule, the Board of Barbers, the Board of Cosmetologists, the Board of Individual Tax Preparers, and the Board of Land Surveyors are all slated to terminate in 2027. The Commission of Real Estate Appraisers, Appraisal Management Companies, and Home Inspectors is scheduled to terminate even earlier in 2026. Allowing these entities to lapse would cause significant disruptions to both the professional licensure and consumer protection services these entities provide. Thousands of practitioners rely on these boards and commissions for credentialing, guidance, and oversight. Their termination would not only halt licensing operations, but also erode essential safeguards that protect Maryland consumers from unqualified or unethical practices. These boards and commissions have consistently demonstrated their importance by upholding professional standards, ensuring accountability, and fostering public confidence in regulated industries. Reauthorizing them through this bill will preserve those critical functions and reaffirm the state's commitment to effective, responsible regulation in the public interest. I did want to note that we do have the executive directors of each board available to answer any technical or board-specific questions that I may not be able to address. With that, I respectfully request a favorable report by the committee on HB 241.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair. For the record, Andrew Fulgeniti with the Maryland Department of Labor. I just wanted to be really briefly flagged for the committee. A couple years back, we had conversations with both the House and the Senate about how agencies could be a little bit more helpful in providing, sunset information when we come and ask for requests. 2 years ago, we passed a series of bills, these boards before you, as part of that process. So in your written testimony, you have the first of those reports. We worked with the Joint Audit Committee over the interim to sort of develop what information would be most useful. A series of questions about information on each of the boards, from their makeup to the licensees they oversee to complaint processes, funding schemes, things like that. So I just wanted to flag that those reports are new to this committee. They are in your written testimony, and we're happy to answer any questions to those.
Delegate Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just for the record, when was this implemented?
The new reporting scheme?
Oh, this state board, the evaluation board that you're talking about.
So the sunset evaluations used to be performed by the Department of Legislative Services under the Maryland Program Evaluation Act. I want to say it was about maybe a decade ago, they switched over to where state agencies would be the entities to come and actually ask for the extensions. We used to be we would always be asking for about a 10-year extension. There was some discussion amongst the Senate and House about whether or not that was relevant. I think we landed on 5-year extensions, at least for our agency, with some additional reporting requirements. So the bill before you is a 5-year extension of each of these groups.
A 5-year extension of the 5-year extension.
Yeah, actually, I think the bills were actually 3 years when they created it. So this is actually lengthening it to a 5-year extension of the ones before you. And going forward, we'll continue with that 5-year request with additional reporting.
How many evaluations have you conducted?
Just the ones that are before you now, but this will be a rolling basis where we'll send in these reports to the Joint Audit Committee.
Okay. And what were the results of those evaluations?
So it's not like a program evaluation, which is handled by the Office of OPEGA under DLS. They actually conduct program evaluations. These are more like informational reports. So the Senate in particular was like, when they were evaluating our sunset request, they requested more information. So this is sort of a standardization of what information we provide to the committees when we're asking for our requests.
Yeah, that's what my next question was. What was the scope?
Yeah, so the reports in front of you cover things from the board members, staffing. We have meeting information, meeting agendas, minutes. You've got data on all the licensees for each of the boards, on the fee structures of those licenses, the costs that the boards incur. We have complaint data and details about how we manage complaints. Any sort of relevant professional associations that are, industry associations that are relevant to those boards. And the last thing is any sort of litigation or disciplinary action handled by those boards is included.
So this is a 5-year extension of the 3-year sunset of previous legislation?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're at the 3-year mark. You're trying to get it extended. So how many evaluations were conducted in the previous 3 years?
Each of the boards before you underwent an evaluation. So there's five right before you in this bill.
5?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you very much. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 242. We'll now move on to House Bill 242. That ends 241, my apologies. So House Bill 242, UI, confidentiality of information.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jason Perkins-Cohen. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Maryland Department of Labor. Good to be back with you this afternoon. I'm joined by our Policy Director, Sabrina Steele, Policy Director of the Unemployment Insurance System. We are here in support of House Bill 242. This bill attempts to provide a balancing act of providing the latitude so that we can provide unemployment insurance data to other state agencies and local agencies so they can use it for good, make programs and evaluations easier for residents, but at the same time have safeguards in place so that data isn't used for the bad. Right now, Maryland does not have a clear, consistent framework for sharing unemployment insurance data. The rules are spread across different sections of law, and in some cases, they're more restrictive than the law requires. This lack of clarity makes it harder than it should be to share data responsibly. And House Bill 242 addresses these issues. It does two things. First, it allows state agencies to work more efficiently by using the data that the state already has. The Division of Unemployment Insurance, as you know, already collects information about work and wages, and when other agencies need that same information, it makes more sense to share it securely than to build new systems, set up new portals, duplicate investigations, or ask people, our residents, your constituents, to share the same information over and over again. A good example of this would be around when the Key Bridge collapsed and we wanted to set up the worker support program. I know you all were very supportive of that. We did not have this bill in place, obviously, and we got the job done, but it would have been much easier, less clunky, less time-consuming, and easier on the residents that we served had we been able to do so. Second, this bill strengthens data protections. So it clearly defines what information is confidential, when it can be shared, and the rules that apply when it is shared. And it establishes penalties for its misuse for both the department employees and for third parties. The accountability is required under federal law and is critical to protecting privacy. So in closing, we ask for a favorable report of House Bill 242. Here to answer any questions. I think.
Oh, you're not presenting, you're just
I'm here to
for-
answer any questions.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Delegate Chi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a simple question. Is this something that requires legislation, or is this something that you can do on your own?
The reason we're here before you is because this legislation will make it a lot easier for us to share data across agencies. And what we're having to do now is we're having to go to whatever the program we're trying to work with and find what works in their law. It also does provide penalties that are currently not in place in Maryland law, and helps us to provide more conformity with the federal law, which we
Okay,
are.
so in order to achieve that level of efficiency, you need to have this codified in the law for the agencies to be able to share data, right?
Yeah, sorry, General Counsel. We do need the statute. It can't be done by regulation. We really need the law to pass.
For data sharing?
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions for this panel? Seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 242. We'll now move on to House Bill 21. Delegate Allen, social media platforms, bloggers, and video content featuring minors.
I do not, Madam Chair. I think there's some testimony online, but yeah, I'm sorry that I'm not going to be as exciting as Delegate Stewart, but yeah, it's tough. It's a tough act to follow. But Madam Chair, members of the committee, friends, Delegate Bhandari, my name is Nick Allen. My name is Nick Allen. I'm here today to testify in support of my bill, House Bill 21, the Child Influencers Protection Act. Some of you might have heard different versions of this bill in the past. One was introduced, I think, 2 years ago by your friend and mine, former Delegate Chaz Lewis. And Delegate Baylor worked on it last year. So I just want to take a moment and thank them for their work on this issue. This bill has several different components to it, but its two main aims are rather simple and things I think we can all kind of agree on. Number one, children who are regularly featured in online social media content that makes money for their parents should be entitled to a percentage of those earnings. Number two, those individuals, when they grow up, should be able to have a say in whether or not their image continues to be used and posted online. So the origin of bills like this or laws like this actually go back to the golden age of Hollywood. Back when the state of California passed the Child Actors Bill, also known as the Coogan Act, in 1939. Prior to this, child actors were regularly left destitute by the time they turned 18 because their parents, family, and or management had taken every single cent they had earned during their career. This was the case for a child actor named Jackie Coogan, for whom the law was named, and who literally began acting as an infant in like vaudeville. And he earned the equivalent of $90 million in his career before he turned 18. And then when he became an adult, he realized he basically had nothing left. So since 1939, employers of child actors in the state of California are required to set aside 15% of that actor's earnings into a trust for the actors, so when they turn 18, they have at least some money. Obviously, a lot of progress has been made since then, but I would argue that the modern equivalent of a lot of these child actors are now kid influencers, or the children of family vloggers. I'm not talking about the average parent. I know there are a lot of parents on the committee. I'm not talking about the average parent or family who shares pictures and videos of their children on their social media for family and friends. I'm talking about influencers, people who make thousands or millions of dollars a year from different social media platforms and ad deals, all based on the content that prominently features their minor children. This bill seeks to address this uniquely 21st century problem, just like the Coogan Act before it. An influencer or vlogger who features their child in video content must compensate the child if at any time within the previous 12-month period, the vlogger qualified for compensation from a social media platform based on the video content's number of views, or they actually receive compensation of at least 10 cents per view for any of the content. Additionally, if the child was featured for at least 30% of the total duration of all content posted within a 30-day period, they're also entitled. A vlogger that is required to compensate one or more children under the bill must pay into separate trusts for each child when they turn 18. The percentage to which the child is entitled depends on the percentage of content in which they're featured. So if they're featured in 35%, they're entitled to 35%. So that's the first part of the bill. The second part may seem separate, but I believe it's an important piece to the overall bill. If someone appeared in a vlogger's video as a child, they can request that that video be permanently removed once they're an adult. When a platform receives this request, it must make reasonable steps to permanently delete all related content. The second portion, I'm aware, and I'm sure you guys are aware looking at your floor system, has a number of people upset about it, or a number of concerns, I'll say. I understand the concern, I understand the workability behind it, but again, I think it's important. I think it's important for the agency of these children when they become adults. I'll also say that a number of similar bills have been introduced in different states. They all have similar components, but they're different kind of in execution. So in some states, it's the responsibility of the owner of the social media account to take that content down. In some states, it's the social media platform itself. It's Meta, Twitter, whatever that's calling itself now. It's the responsibility of the platform. So again, I'm open to whatever to the committee seems the most workable. So again, several bills have been proposed in different states. Overall, again, the goal here is to, the same as the Coogan Act, is to protect the children from the adults who might be making money off of them. So with that, I look forward to answering your questions. I respectfully ask a favorable report.
Any questions for Delegate Allen? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to the opposition. We have one in person, one virtual. We have Megan Stokes and Margaret Durkin. John, thank you very much.
Yep.
We'll now move on to the opposition. We have one in person, one virtual. We have Megan Stokes and Margaret Durkin.
Technology is great when it works. So Chair Valderrama and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify again. I am still Megan Stokes, State Policy Director for the Computer and Communications Industry Association. We appreciate the intent behind House Bill 21 and share the goal of protecting individuals who are featured and monetized online content as children. However, we must oppose the bill unless it is amended. As drafted, HB 21 would place the covered websites in sort of a untenable position where they have to permanently delete content at the request of a third party, but that forces platforms to adjudicate maybe private disputes involving family relationships, contracts, privacy rights, and constitutional protections, often years after content was posted with little or no context. So, for example, platforms could be asked to resolve disputes between adult children and parents who originally created the content, or between co-parents following a divorce. In other cases, services may be asked to determine whether content removal is consistent with contractual agreements, copyright law, or the First Amendment. These are complex legal questions that digital services are not equipped or are often constitutionally constrained from resolving. The likely result is over-removal of lawful content and inconsistent outcomes. The other issue that comes into play is what happens with a platform that no longer exists. So if you had an agreement for sponsorship through Vine, and that's no longer a service here, what happens? How do you get that removed correctly? The good news is that the bill's goals can be achieved through some narrow and clarifying amendments. Individuals who appear and monetize content as children will be better protected by placing the deletion obligation on the person who created and controlled the content. Typically the parent or guardian, but in some cases it's a company or corporation, rather than the platform that merely hosted it. This approach aligns with laws enacted in other states, including Minnesota, and provides clearer accountability and more effective relief without deputizing platforms to referee private family disputes. For these reasons, CCIA urges the committee to oppose House Bill 21 unless amended. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Margaret Durkin, again with TechNet. I'm the Mid-Atlantic Executive Director for the organization. In opposition to House Bill 21, while we appreciate the policy concerns in this bill, we believe that it will potentially sweep in a large number of those in the internet vlogging space. Regarding those deletion requests, we believe that that has the potential to lead to business challenges and leaves many questions. For example, how would a platform establish the identity of said minor turned adult? And then perhaps what if there's more than one minor in the video that is requesting deletion? As an alternative, we would recommend that the bill requires a deletion request should go from the child to their parent. Platforms have a responsibility to privacy as well, and it's important that they balance that with public interest and newsworthiness. And we're concerned that elements of this bill may impede on our platform's ability to participate in that space. For example, how would platforms contend with a deletion request when it's at a newsworthy event, or say, for example, a minor with a partial face in a frame was in said video? We would recommend that the sponsor and committee look to Illinois Senate Bill 178 from 2023, which provides for trusts and compensation be set up by the parent for their minor child. And should this bill move forward, we do encourage the committee to look to Illinois. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Delegate Rogers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So both for Ms. Durkin and Ms. Stokes, have you all reached out to the bill sponsor to have a conversation about how this could be possibly worked out?
Thank you, Delegate Rogers. Yes, today. So he was very amenable. Thank you, Delegate Allen. So I think that there's some good discussions that can go forward. I think that there is an understanding of looking at other existing laws that are out there. There are other ones in Arkansas and Utah, California. So there is a couple of different things to look at and see what's already been working, and the sponsor seems to be amenable.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, and from a TechNet perspective, our lobbyists did reach out to the sponsor yesterday as well.
Thank you. Delegate Bandari.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. And you mentioned that existing contract protects children, but how do we ensure those contracts are actually fair to the child, especially when the parents might not have a legal expertise?
Could you expand upon what you mean by contracts?
I mean, whatever is generally, whenever the child work in any industry or stuff like that, right? So like if some parents don't know anything, right? So how do they are protected?
So I think
like unaware of their rights, basically, have equitable access to this protection in practice.
Sure, so that's something that can be done through a variety of different ways, but mostly through like the different platforms or the companies that they're working with. So if they have to follow, let's say it's a multi-state company that is working with family vloggers in Illinois or Utah or California, they're already having to follow those existing laws, and they're probably already making the families aware, here are your rights, and here's how much money you have to set aside. Unfortunately, I don't necessarily speak too much until the contract portion and how much has to be set aside.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no additional questions, thank you very much, ladies. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 21. We'll move on to our last bill of the day, House Bill 236, State Athletic Commission, blood testing of contestants.
This chair doesn't roll. Good afternoon, Chair Valderrama, Vice Chair Charkoudian, and members of the Economic Matters Committee. For the record, my name is John Dove, and I serve as the Commissioner for the Division of Occupational and Professional Licensing within the Maryland Department of Labor. Today, I'm testifying in support of HB 236. This legislation is vital to maintaining the efficiency, practicality, and fairness of the Maryland State Athletic Commission's regulatory framework. As you know, the Commission, housed within the Maryland Department of Labor, is responsible for overseeing the safety and licensing of contestants in professional and amateur combat sports. Under current law, contestants must provide proof of negative blood tests for HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C within a 30-day period before competing in Maryland. This bill extends that window to 90 days, bringing Maryland in line with national standards and modern medical guidance. This adjustment may seem minor, but it has a meaningful impact to both athletes and promoters. Extending the time frame reduces unnecessary financial burdens for promoters and administrative burdens for athletes who often compete in multiple jurisdictions. It also allows the Commission to operate more efficiently without compromising public health or safety. Neighboring states such as Virginia and Delaware accept blood work valid for up to 180 days. Pennsylvania accepts results valid for 180 days, and the District of Columbia allows results to remain valid for up to 1 year. Some may express concern that lengthening the testing window could lessen safety precautions. However, the 90-day standard is consistent with the timeframes used by other state athletic commissions across the country, which have implemented this policy successfully for years without compromising athlete health or safety. Ultimately, this bill ensures that Maryland's policies remain both protective and practical, strengthening regulatory consistency, reducing redundancy, and supporting fair access for contestants. I'm also joined today by Dave Norman, who's our chair of the Maryland State Athletic Commission, who is available to answer any questions the committee may have. With that, the department respectfully requests a favorable report on HB 236. I'm happy to answer any questions. Just here to answer questions.
Yep.
Delegate Ahrens.
Yes, sorry, just real quickly, you said extending it, there's no problems with that. Are there any instances where that's been a problem? 30 days versus 90 days, I would think you can get a disease in 30 days, 60, 90? Hit the button.
Delegate.
There you go.
Okay, there we go.
There you go. You're good.
Delegate, my name's Dave Norman. I'm the chairman of the State Athletic Commission. And we have looked at that specific question before the commission decided to vote to put this bill forward. I spoke with the then chief physician for the commission. Obviously, the diseases we're talking about are viruses. We know that viruses can linger unknownst in your body. And there is a variety of timeframes throughout the country that we tend to be an outlier with respect to those timeframes in that we are the most restrictive. There's only one other state that has a 30-day standard. What was felt by our chief physician, who is a member of the Association of Ringside Physicians specializing in combat sports, is that since there has not been an incident of bloodborne pathogen being transmitted by any combative sport participant who has been tested under these different standards, that raising our standard from a 30-day standard to a 90-day standard did not pose any undue or even particular risk. Combative sport participants are not at higher risk of carrying these types of pathogens than the average member of the public. Obviously, these are individuals who train excessively, are generally speaking in tremendously good shape, very concerned about their health and well-being, and use this combative sporting as potentially a livelihood. So we did delve into that before the commission supported this change from 30 days to 90 days.
I guess the physician says it. It just doesn't sound logical that you extend it and that's not an issue. I mean, I can get sick tomorrow and then I can be healthy and then boom, it comes back. I don't know how that date works, but if your doctors are telling you that, I guess Got to rely on them, but that makes
We,
sense.
we had the same question at the commission, Your Honor, or, sir. and
All
you-
right. Thank you.
Same debate. There was much debate on that. Again, we're being very cautious with 90 days versus the 180-day standard in a lot of states.
That's why I quit boxing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Delegate Bandari.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While the bill improves the flexibility and reduces some administrative burden for those players, extending this testing window to 90 days, I believe, raises a legitimate public health concern, like in combat sports. I come from the health committee, where this blood exposure is very common, and the older test result may not accurately reflect a contestant current health status, potentially increasing risks to other participants. How would you like to react on that, comment on that?
Again, kind of just reviewing the discussion we just a little bit just had. Our head physician was comfortable with the 90 days. He would just said we start there. He was not, I won't say on board with the 180. He felt 90 would be the start and see where we go from there. But there's been no incidents with any of the states that we know of that are at 90 days or above. We have not gotten any reports of issues in regards to this policy.
And to your point, every participant in a combative sport also undergoes a physical examination the day prior to the sport, the contest actually occurring. We have a weigh-in, obviously, we have different weight classes. People have to make the weight classes. To the extent that we have female combative sport participants, they have to produce a negative pregnancy test, so that it's not as if we are solely relying on these blood tests. We have actually physicians eyeballing each and every contestant the day before the exam to see if there's any indications of not just these bloodborne pathogens, but any illness which may impact either their safety, their opponent's safety, or the safety of the crowd.
Okay, thank you. The whole purpose is to reduce the administrative burden, or are there other purposes with this?
What we have found, Maryland is what you would call a tertiary, essentially a club-level combative sport state. You have places like Detroit, Chicago, certain others might be a secondary, and then, of course, Las Vegas or Madison Square Garden would be the pinnacle. Fighters fight in different jurisdictions. Oftentimes, fighters fall out suddenly before an event, 10 days before the event, 7 days before the event. There's a reason why one opponent cannot participate. They look then to get a substitute. We've had situations where the substitute, because of Maryland standards, comes in, has to get a blood test, and the blood test is actually not reported back. It gets tested on Wednesday. We do not get the results back in time for a Saturday night fight, and the fight has to be called off. So that this is allowing the promoters a reasonable amount of time to be able to use John Jones's blood work from a fight that he fought 2.5 months ago and still use that fighter as a substitute or as a primary fighter for an event in Maryland.
Thank you. That's a very good point. Thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no additional questions, thank you very much. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 236. That concludes the bill hearings for today, members. Just a friendly reminder that we have another event this evening at 6 p.m. You should have received emails as to the venue. If you don't know, you can ask Ms. Joy. You're encouraged, not mandated, but encouraged to attend. Thank you. We are adjourned.